My mother convinced my boyfriend to marry my sister. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, "She's stronger and better for you," as if I were the weakest link in my own life. When I found out, something inside me broke so cleanly, it felt like silence. So I left Boston, my family, the ruins of who I used to be, and I built a life from nothing. Years later, at the grand party I hosted in Seattle, my family walked through my doors smiling. But when they saw my husband, their faces turned pale, and the story truly began. I was raised in a house that looked flawless from the outside. White pillars, manicured hedges, windows glowing softly at dusk. Neighbors admired it, friends envied it. But inside, everything felt rehearsed, like we were actors trapped in a long-running play. My mother, Linda, directed every scene with precision. Appearances mattered more than truth. And at the center of it all stood my older sister, Scarlett, effortless and adored. She didn't have to try. The world leaned toward her naturally. Compliments followed her into rooms. Teachers lit up when she spoke. Relatives praised her beauty, her charm, her presence. I hovered at the edges, quiet and useful, but never chosen. Linda treated Scarlett like proof of success. She brushed her hair, adjusted her clothes, showcased her like something precious. "She has presence," she'd say proudly. Then her eyes would slide to me, usually in jeans, hair tied back, a book under my arm, and her expression would dim. "Willow's intelligent," my father would offer, always the same line. Linda would sigh, as if disappointed. Intelligence fades. People remember presence. I learned early which of us mattered more. I pretended it didn't hurt. I was wrong. Every word settled deep and stayed there. I escaped into logic, into screens and code and systems that behaved fairly. Programming didn't care who you were or who your sister was. If something broke, it told you. If you fixed it, it worked. There was comfort in that honesty. At home, effort meant nothing. Outcomes were already decided. Then Ethan appeared. I met him during my junior year, tucked away in a shared student workspace. He smiled easily, listened closely, and spoke like my thoughts deserved space. To someone trained to be invisible, his attention felt unreal. He noticed things my family never had, the way I organized ideas, the way I solved problems quietly, the steadiness I carried without applause. Being with him felt like warmth after years of emotional winter. When I brought him home, my father welcomed him. Scarlett smiled with practiced ease. My mother, though, studied him carefully. Not him exactly, but what he could become, what he represented. Stability, direction, potential. Later, stirring her tea, she remarked how nice it was that he seemed steady, that maybe he'd pull me out of my tech bubble. It sounded kind. It wasn't. I ignored the shift at first, ignored Scarlett dressing up more when Ethan visited, ignored my mother pulling him aside to ask about his future, ignored the way his voice softened when he mentioned my sister. I wanted something in my life to stay untouched, but nothing in my family ever stayed mine. The changes crept in quietly. Ethan started arriving late, explanations vague. He checked his phone constantly. One morning, he mentioned my mother's cooking like it was familiar. I asked when he'd seen them. He hesitated, then said Linda had invited him over just to talk. Just to talk? She hadn't asked me about my life in months, but she had time for him. The dread grew when I found a gas receipt in his car from Boston. He'd said he was in New York. When I questioned him, he smiled stiffly. "Your mom needed help," he said. "She said you were busy." Busy, the word my mother used whenever she replaced me. He added that Scarlett had been struggling, that she needed support. He said it gently, as if she were fragile glass, and I was built to withstand impact. I drove home one weekend without warning. I needed truth more than reassurance. I walked into the house late, voices spilling softly from the living room. I stopped in the hallway. Scarlett laughing, Ethan responding, my mother humming approvingly. I leaned forward just enough to see them. Scarlett sitting close, Ethan unsure, conflicted, my mother seated like a ruler overseeing succession. "She's stronger and better for you," Linda said smoothly. "Willow is distracted. She chooses work. Scarlett understands connection. Scarlett played her part perfectly. I just want you happy." My chest cracked open without sound. Linda kept going. "Willow will be fine, she always is, but Scarlett needs someone like you, someone who fits." Ethan said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't look for me. He let the moment happen. And in that silence, I understood everything. This wasn't impulse, it was design. I don't remember leaving. I remember gripping the steering wheel, driving through Boston's cold night until the city thinned and the pain finally caught up. I called Riley. She came without questions. She watched me pack and told me the truth I couldn't say yet. "You need to leave all of this behind." She was right. I withdrew from school days later. People protested, advisors worried, but the truth was simple. I couldn't breathe in Boston anymore. The betrayal didn't just break my heart, it broke the illusion I'd clung to my whole life, that if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, proved myself enough, my family would eventually see me. Instead, they'd shown me exactly who they were. I packed what I could, sold what I couldn't. Then I left, moving across the country with one checked suitcase and no plan other than escape. Seattle felt like a foreign planet at first. The air smelled of rain and cedar. People didn't know my mother. They didn't know Scarlett. They didn't know that the girl ordering coffee with trembling hands had just watched her life implode. Riley's cousin let me crash in her small apartment for a few weeks. I remember lying awake on that fold-out couch, hearing the refrigerator hum, feeling the weight of failure pressing into my ribs. But pain is strange. It breaks you open in ways that make space for something new. On a quiet morning, after days of barely functioning, I stood at the window and saw the sun hitting the lake. Something in me, something small but stubborn, whispered, "Get up." So I did. I found a therapist, Dr. Linden, who didn't accept my polite, "I'm fine." She pushed until the truth spilled out, messy and raw. You weren't chosen because your family didn't want to see your worth. That's not your failure. I applied to finish my degree in Seattle. Then I built a new life one piece at a time. Jobs, routines, friendships, stability. My world didn't rebuild quickly, but it rebuilt honestly. And slowly, anger became clarity, clarity became strength, and strength became something dangerously close to peace. But peace didn't last, because years later, when my father sent a quiet text about wanting to visit, everything I'd left behind began making its way back toward me. They arrived on a gray Seattle afternoon. My mother first stepping out of the car like she owned the driveway, Scarlett behind her with sunglasses too big for her face, and Ethan slower, hesitant, looking everywhere but at me. My father emerged last, thinner than the last time I'd seen him, his shoulders rounded, his eyes searching for mine. Michael stayed beside me at the doorway, steady and warm in a way that my mother's expression flickered. I saw it, the tiny flash of recalibration. She hadn't expected him, hadn't expected this version of me. "Willow," she said with a smile that matched the tone she used on neighbors she secretly judged. My, you've built quite a life," as if she had destroyed the first one.
"Come in," I said, stepping aside. Inside the house, our house. My mother's eyes swept across the vaulted ceilings, the lake view, the clean lines and warm wood tones. My living room was controlled, intentional, and for the first time in my life, I had home field advantage. We sat for dinner, my father, quiet, Scarlett glancing around with thinly veiled envy, Ethan shrinking into his chair every time Michael spoke. My mother, of course, narrated the room like she was leading a tour, and then Michael asked the one question that cracked the surface. "So," he said calmly, "when was the last time all of you were in the same room together?" My mother straightened. "The engagement party, of course." My stomach tightened. Scarlett stiffened. Ethan took a large sip of water, nearly choking on it. Michael nodded, perfectly polite. That must have been difficult for Willow. The room stilled. My mother's smile thinned. Well, Willow wasn't emotionally prepared for that season of life. A season of life? Not betrayal, not manipulation. A season? I opened my mouth, but Scarlett beat me to it. "Mom, stop," she said quietly. My mother's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me?" Scarlett set down her fork. Her hands trembled slightly. "We're not doing this. Not here." My mother's voice lowered. "Scarlett, no." Scarlett insisted, louder this time. "You need to hear this." And then, impossibly, like watching a dam crack open, years of secrets spilled into the open. "Willow deserves the truth," she said. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Scarlett looked at me, really looked, and for a moment she wasn't the golden child, the chosen one, the polished perfection. She looked tired, sad, human. "Mom didn't just talk to Ethan," she began. "She called him repeatedly, told him you were distracted, too ambitious, that you weren't serious about your future with him." My stomach dropped. "She also told him you were talking to someone else at school," Scarlett whispered, "that you were planning to leave him." "I never—" My voice cracked. "I know," she said quickly. "I know you didn't." Ethan's face went red. "Scarlett." She held up a hand. "I'm not finished." My mother's jaw clenched. "Scarlett Hart, you will stop this right now." "No, Linda," Michael said evenly. "She won't." The icy silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever seen my mother confronted with. She turned her fury on Michael, but he didn't flinch, not once. Scarlett pressed on. "Mom even drafted messages on your old device," she confessed. "She had me send them so they looked like they came from you." I stared at her. "You sent them?" Tears filled her eyes. "I was stupid. I believed her when she said you'd be fine, that you didn't need him, that I needed him more." Michael reached for my hand under the table. His grip was grounding, real. "And Ethan?" I asked hoarsely. He finally looked up. His eyes were glassy, ashamed. "I was wrong," he said. "I trusted the wrong people. I should have talked to you. I should have fought for us. Instead, I let your mother decide what our future was." My father, silent until now, set his glass down with a trembling hand. "Linda," he whispered, "is this true?" My mother exhaled sharply. "I protected my daughters. I did what any mother would do." "No," I said quietly. "You did what served your image, what made Scarlett look better, what kept me small." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Scarlett wiped her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Willow. I really am. And it's not just that." Ethan lowered his eyes again. My mother's face went rigid. Scarlett continued. "Mom told Ethan his career would be stronger with someone more polished, more useful for networking." Useful? Networking? Like I was a resume and she was editing me out? My father looked gutted. "Linda, how could you do that?" But before she could answer, Michael pushed his chair back slightly, leaning forward with a calmness that somehow made him more formidable. "What you did," he said to Linda, "was abuse, emotional manipulation. You didn't just sabotage her relationship, you sabotaged her future because it didn't fit your narrative." My mother's voice trembled with indignation. "I won't be lectured in my daughter's home." "No," I said softly, "you won't. You'll listen." The room felt electric. I looked at all of them, my parents, my sister, my ex, people who had once been the center of my life, people who dismantled it piece by piece. "You cost me years," I said. "You cost me stability, my final semester, my confidence. You told me I wasn't worth choosing, but I built myself back without you." My mother scoffed, but it was weak, defensive. "You left us," she said. "No," I replied, "you pushed me out." The room stayed frozen until my father spoke, voice raw. "Willow, I am so sorry. I knew things were wrong. I didn't stop it. That's my failure, not yours." For the first time in decades, he looked directly at my mother. "This ends," he said, softly but firmly. "Linda," his expression faltered, shocked that the man who always stayed silent had finally taken a side. Michael stood, then, walking to my side. His presence alone was a declaration. "When they saw my husband, their faces turned pale," I said, looking at each of them. "This is why. Not because of who he is, but because he represents the life I built without you, one you couldn't control." Scarlett let out a quiet sob. Ethan stared at the floor. My mother grabbed her purse. "We're leaving." But my father didn't move. "I'm staying," he said. "Willow and we have things to mend." My mother stared at him, stunned. Then she walked out. Scarlett followed slowly, but before she left, she turned back to me. "I'm done letting her control me," she whispered. "I want to make things right, if you'll let me." Ethan approached last. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "and I'll spend years being sorry, but I'm glad you found someone who sees you." Then he too walked out. The door closed. Silence. Michael squeezed my hand. "You okay?" And for the first time in years, I was. In the days after that confrontation, the house felt strangely quiet, like years of noise had finally drained out. My father stayed with us for the rest of the week. We took slow walks by the lake, sat on the balcony in the evenings, and talked in a way we never had before. No pretending, no tiptoeing around my mother's moods, just honesty, fragile but real. One morning, when the light hit the water in soft gold, he said, "I spent so long trying to make waves that I forgot how to protect the people who needed me most." His voice carried regret, not shame. "I can't change the past, Willow, but I want to spend whatever time I have left being your dad." I reached for his hand. That's all I ever wanted. We stayed connected after he returned to Boston. Weekly calls, hospital updates, quiet conversations that felt like repairing old bridges. When he passed months later, I flew back for the funeral. Scarlett stood beside me. She'd left Ethan, moved into a small apartment, and found a job on her own. Nothing glamorous, that entirely hers. For the first time, she looked like someone choosing her life instead of performing it. "Thanks for giving me another chance," she whispered. "We're all rewriting old stories," I told her. "You get to write yours, too." My mother remained distant, polite in a brittle way, reduced to the perimeter of my life where she could no longer wound me, and that boundary alone felt like victory. Back in Seattle, with Michael's hand in mine, and a life built from my own strength, I understood something simple and profound. I didn't win because they lost. I won because I healed. When I look back now, I don't think about the betrayal. I think about the rebuilding. I think about the woman I became once I stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing myself. My mother's schemes didn't break me, they revealed me, and the life I have today proves it. If you've ever survived family betrayal or had to rebuild from nothing, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be.